So Princess Anne just made a 10-minute phone call to a senior palace lawyer that basically signalled the end of Queen Camilla's secure position in the royal family. And the immediate consequence is that Anne and Prince William have quietly joined forces to systematically dismantle Camilla's entire power base from the inside out. And honestly, this is so much bigger than a family feud, because this is about the two of them finally avenging Princess Diana nearly 30 years after her death. Before we get into all of it, make sure you are subscribed to Crown Watch so you do not miss updates as more details come out. We break this stuff down every single week. All right, let us start where the story actually begins. And here's the part that actually gets crazy. About 3 weeks before this whole situation really started leaking out into the public sphere, a senior palace aide picked up a phone and made a call that sources are describing as deeply, deeply unusual. In the royal family, when there is a problem, you normally call a communications director. You call a press secretary. You call a government liaison to handle the spin. You do not just call a high-level private lawyer unless something massive is shifting behind closed doors. But this call did not go to a PR person. It went straight to a senior legal representative on behalf of Princess Anne. And the entire subject of the call was Camilla. Now here is the thing you need to understand about this specific phone call. It lasted less than 10 minutes. It was incredibly short. It was brutally precise. And according to sources who know how these things operate, it was exactly the kind of conversation someone has when they have already made a massive decision, and they just need to confirm that the legal path is completely clear to execute it. That call was not a negotiation. It was not a brainstorming session about how to handle a family disagreement. It was the first quiet, invisible move in an operation that is currently shaking the absolute foundation of Buckingham Palace. Think about who we are talking about here for a second. Princess Anne has been a working member of this family for over 70 years. She is the ultimate company woman. To truly understand why this phone call sent shockwaves through the household, you have to remember who Anne actually is in royal history. Back in 1974, when an armed gunman tried to kidnap her, right outside Buckingham Palace, shooting her bodyguard and driver, she looked the gunman dead in the eye and famously said, "Not bloody likely." That is the level of steel we are dealing with. She does not panic, she does not do drama, and she sure as hell does not waste time on emotional outbursts. She has watched literally every single modern royal scandal unfold in real time from the front row. She watched the affairs, she watched the catastrophic separation, she watched the infamous television interviews, she watched the divorce, and she watched the horrific fallout of Diana's death. And through all of those decades, through every single crisis that threatened to bring the monarchy to its knees, Anne managed her feelings about it with complete, absolute, terrifying professionalism. When the infamous leaked cassette tapes destroyed the palace's public standing in 1992 and 1993, Anne did not utter a single word to the press when the public turned on the crown following Diana's tragic death in August 1997. Anne stayed locked away at Balmoral with young William and Harry, shielding them from the cameras while quietly holding the family together behind the scenes. She never leaked. She never complained. She never gave an interview to settle a score. She kept her mouth shut and did her job. So ask yourself this: why now? Why in 2026? After keeping this locked down in a vault for 3 decades, is Princess Anne suddenly making moves? Why break a lifetime of stoic silence right at the moment? When King Charles is at his most vulnerable, the answer to that question is what has the palace completely on edge? Because the answer involves someone else who is completely done pretending. The answer is Prince William. William and Anne are the two people in this family who have the most institutional power right now, and they are the two people who have the deepest, most unresolved issues with how Camilla was forced upon the British public. They are moving together. They are not making speeches. They are not releasing statements. They are moving the actual levers of power to strip away the foundation Camilla has spent decades building. And I think that is the detail that made everyone stop cold. Camilla thought she had survived the worst of it. She thought her title protected her. But she completely underestimated what happens when the two most disciplined people in the royal family finally decide that enough is enough. And to understand why Anne is finally making her move right now, you have to look at what Prince William just quietly did with a massive, mind-boggling amount of money. Now here is what makes this even more significant. If you want to understand how power actually shifts in the royal family, you have to stop looking at the tiaras and start looking at the bank accounts. We need to talk about the Duchy of Cornwall. And to understand why this matters, you need to understand what the duchy actually is. When most people hear the phrase Duchy of Cornwall, they probably think of a cute little farm somewhere in the English countryside, or maybe some organic biscuits sold in a high-end grocery store. That is not what this is. We are not talking about a ceremonial title or a symbolic trust fund here. The Duchy of Cornwall is a sprawling, multi-layered, aggressive corporate empire. It was originally established all the way back in 1337 by King Edward III to provide a private income for his son, the Black Prince, ensuring that the heir to the throne would never be financially dependent on the king or parliament. For nearly 7 centuries, that fund has grown into a financial behemoth. It is a private estate valued at approximately £1.2 billion. It generates roughly £30 million in pure liquid cash every single year. It owns literal islands like the Isles of Scilly. It owns massive stretches of the English coastline, commercial real estate in London, residential developments and ancient forests across Dartmoor. And here is the detail that changes everything. Prince William now controls every single penny of it, for 53 years from 1969, when he reached his majority, until 2022. Charles ran the duchy like his personal kingdom. Charles used that empire to build organic farming movements, construct entire experimental towns, like Poundbury and Dorset, and launch high-end commercial brands like Duchy Originals back in 1990. But more importantly, Charles used that £30 million a year to build a massive financial umbrella. He used duchy profits to fund his own personal lifestyle, to pay for Camilla's private security before they were married, to finance her personal staff at Clarence House, and to pay for the high-priced public relations advisors who worked for years to scrub Camilla's image clean. When Queen Elizabeth passed away and Charles became king, William instantly became the Duke of Cornwall. He did not just inherit a title, he inherited absolute unchecked financial control over one of the largest private empires in Britain. William had been preparing for this moment for years, even quietly taking a custom agricultural management course at Cambridge University back in 2014, just to master the estate's complex business model. He does not have to consult the government, he does not have to ask Parliament for permission, and most importantly, he absolutely does not have to ask his father for approval to spend that money. The money is his to direct. By 2025, William was pulling in that £30 million annual income, and he began using it with a level of precision that honestly terrified the people inside Camilla's inner circle. Because William is not just managing tenant farms and looking at spreadsheets, he is using that £1.2 billion war chest as a weapon. He is using it to settle a score, to rewrite the power dynamic, and to systematically starve Camilla's allies of the access and the resources they have enjoyed for the last 20 years. Honestly, when you understand what this really meant for William, you see exactly why Camilla is terrified. For decades, William had to sit at the table and smile while Charles funded Camilla's lifestyle, funded her staff, and funded the slow, painful PR campaign to force the British public to accept her. William had no financial independence from that machine. He had to play along because Charles held the purse strings. That dynamic is completely dead now. William is the one holding the checkbook. He is a fully independent financial titan within the institution. He does not need the king's money, which means he no longer has to tolerate the king's wife. And he is using that £30 million a year to build a completely separate centre of gravity within the monarchy, a centre of gravity that completely excludes the Queen Consort. But he isn't just doing this for the sake of a power grab. He's doing it to settle a deeply personal debt that started when he was just 15 years old. But to truly understand why William and Anne could do this without flinching, you have to go back to the history that the palace has spent 20 years desperately trying to erase. You have to go back to August 31st, 1997. Most people remember the broad strokes of the story. They remember the bitter divorce in August 1996. They remember the tragic crash in the Pont de l'Alma tunnel in Paris. And they remember the massive national grief at the funeral. What most people forget is the agonizing, suffocating reality of what it was actually like for a 15-year-old Prince William to wake up at Balmoral Castle that Sunday morning and learn that his mother was gone. They forget what it was like for that young boy to walk behind his mother's coffin through the streets of London on September 6, 1997, with the entire world watching his grief in real time. It was Prince Philip who famously walked up to William before the procession and whispered, "If I walk, will you walk with me?" William was a child. He was a boy who had just lost the centre of his universe, and he had to endure that agonising march while standing next to the men who represented the institution that had actively made his mother's life a living hell. To really feel the weight of this, you have to remember what Diana endured in the 90s, back in 1986, when Charles quietly restarted his physical affair with Camilla. Diana was left isolated in Kensington Palace, struggling with bulimia and severe depression. When Diana finally spoke out in her explosive 1995 Panorama interview, telling the world that There were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded. The palace machine turned on her with brutal efficiency. They stripped her of her Royal Highness title during the 1996 divorce. They removed her security detail. They treated her like an unstable outsider. While behind the scenes, Charles and his advisors were already drafting plans to reintroduce Camilla to the public. And here is the part that honestly turns the stomach when you really think about it. For nearly 30 years, William has never made a single public statement connecting his feelings about Camilla to his feelings about what his mother went through, not once. When Charles gave his famous 1994 television interview with Jonathan Dimbleby publicly admitting his infidelity, William was a young student at Ludgrove School, forced to endure the teasing of classmates. Yet he never gave a tell-all interview about it. He never wrote a chapter in a book about how much he resented the woman who sat in the shadows of his parents' marriage. He just swallowed it. He swallowed the anger. He swallowed the betrayal. And he watched as the institution slowly, methodically rehabilitated Camilla's image. He watched them put a crown on her head. He watched her take the physical spaces, the titles, and the platforms that literally belonged to Diana. And Princess Anne watched it all happen too. Anne was there in the 1980s and 90s. She saw the affairs. She saw how Diana was treated when she tried to speak out. Anne was the one who listened to the gossip, saw the leaks from Clarence House, and watched the palace machinery turn against the Princess of Wales, protecting Charles and Camilla at all costs. Anne kept her silence because she believed that duty to the crown came before personal feelings. But this is not new. This goes back further than most people realise. This is decades of stored, compounded resentment. Sources say that both Anne and William reached a breaking point recently. They reached a point where they realised that if they did not act, Camilla's rewritten version of history would become the permanent truth. They realised they were done allowing institutional loyalty to override their private convictions. They were done watching the woman who contributed to Diana's destruction completely overwrite her legacy. And for 20 years, Camilla thought she had completely gotten away with it. She thought her legacy was entirely safe because nobody had stopped her yet. She had no idea what was actually coming. And this is the detail that stopped me cold when I first read it, because it shows you exactly how strategic Camilla actually is. You have to look at the scheme Camilla has been running for the last 2 decades. It wasn't just about marrying the man she loved back in April 2005 at Windsor Guildhall. The plan was staggering in its ambition, and honestly staggering in its audacity. Think back to 1999. Right after Diana died, public hostility toward Camilla was so intense that PR executives estimated 90% of the British public openly despised her. So, Charles brought in a high-powered PR operative named Mark Bolland to execute what internal palace insiders dubbed Operation Parker Bowles. It was a ruthless multi-year media campaign designed to normalise Camilla step by step. It started in January 1999 with a carefully staged photo opportunity outside the Ritz Hotel in London, the first time Charles and Camilla were photographed together in public. Then came the gradual appearances at charity events, the discreet invitations to royal estates, and eventually the push to grant her royal patronages. Over 20 years, Camilla quietly accumulated hundreds of royal patronages. She attached her name to domestic violence charities, to military regiments, to literary societies. She wasn't just doing charity work, she was buying legitimacy. She was making herself structurally necessary to the daily operation of the crown, so that when Charles eventually took the throne, the public would have no choice but to accept her. But it went much deeper than just charities. Think about the coronation in May 2023. Camilla did not just show up to be crowned. She walked into Westminster Abbey wearing the Girls of Great Britain and Ireland tiara. Now to an average person watching on television that just looks like a bunch of expensive diamonds. But in the royal world, that specific tiara is a weapon. It was originally presented to Queen Mary back in 1893 as a wedding gift from the women of Great Britain and Ireland. Queen Mary passed it to her granddaughter, Queen Elizabeth, as a wedding present in 1947. It was the Queen's personal favourite tiara, the one she affectionately called Granny's tiara, the very piece of jewellery that appeared on British banknotes and coins for decades. It is the ultimate visual symbol of legitimate British queenship. Contrast that with Diana, who was never allowed to wear the Queen's iconic personal tiaras during her marriage, having to rely on her own family's Spencer tiara instead. Camilla wearing Queen Elizabeth's absolute favourite piece of jewellery was a massive calculated power play. It was a visual broadcast to the entire world, and especially to William, that she had won. She had beaten the system, the rehabilitation was totally complete, and she did not stop there. She was methodically bringing her own family, the Parker Bowles circle, into the royal fold. Her son Tom, Parker Bowles, and her daughter Laura Lopes were suddenly getting invitations to private royal retreats. Her sister, Annabel Elliot, was being positioned as an official companion to the Queen. She was getting them access to royal spaces, getting them on the guest lists for major state events, and quietly securing them proximity to power. Does any of that sound like someone who just wants to quietly support her husband? Or does it sound like a woman actively trying to overwrite Diana's history, so her own legacy would look completely clean? She had been building toward this for years. She was rewriting the historical record in real time, making sure that, when future generations looked back, they would see a legitimate beloved queen consort, and they would view Diana as just a tragic footnote. She was literally one step away from pulling it off entirely. The crown was on her head, her family was in the palace, and Charles was completely dependent on her. She had won. Until Princess Anne decided to unlock a specific, highly restricted door at Windsor Castle. Okay, so here is the part that actually changes everything. This is where the story shifts from a slow-burning resentment into an active, aggressive operation. There is a room at Windsor Castle called the Royal Archives, located high up in the historic Round Tower, which was originally converted into a dedicated historic repository back in 1911 during the reign of King George V. It is not a library you can buy a ticket to see. There are no tourists, there are no documentary crews, and there is absolutely no public access. What is locked inside that secure vault is the unfiltered, unedited, private history of the British royal family stretching back centuries. It holds the raw letters of Queen Victoria, the secret abdication papers of Edward VIII from 1936, the private diaries of monarchs, internal palace memos, and the confidential correspondence that documents exactly what was happening inside the palace behind closed doors. And crucially, it holds the absolute unredacted truth about what happened during the turbulent 1980s and 90s. Sources say that Princess Anne has been quietly using her extremely high-level security clearance, a privilege she holds as Princess Royal and a Counsellor of State, to access those specific archives. She has been going back and reviewing the private contemporaneous written record of the collapse of Charles and Diana's marriage. She is looking at the specific documents that prove exactly who knew what, when they knew it, and exactly how the institution actively covered up Camilla's involvement, while simultaneously punishing Diana for crying out for help. Think about what is sitting in those boxes. We are talking about private letters written between Prince Philip and Diana in 1992, during the darkest days of the marriage separation letters, where Philip tried to mediate, but where the brutal reality of Charles's emotional abandonment of Diana was laid completely bare. We are talking about internal memos written by private secretaries like Sir Robert Fellows, documenting how communications officers intentionally spun stories to the press to make Diana look emotionally unstable whenever she complained about Camilla's presence in Charles's life. What Anne found in that envelope of history changed the entire picture. The public knows the broad strokes we all know about the affair, the leaked phone calls, and the tell-all books. But the archives contain the institutional dimension. They contain the specific proof of how Diana's desperate pleas for help were ignored, mocked, and buried by the people who were supposed to protect her. According to sources, these documents tell a story of institutional betrayal that goes so much further than anything that has ever been printed in a newspaper. And Anne wants the historical record to reflect that unvarnished truth. She wants to ensure that Camilla cannot sanitize the past. Anne believes that the woman currently sitting on the throne has absolutely no right to shape how the most painful chapter of Diana's life gets remembered. Anne is making sure the receipts are protected, ensuring that Camilla's carefully constructed narrative can be ripped apart by the actual historical facts whenever the time is right. Anne had the history locked down and secured. But William was not waiting for history books to be written. William was already executing a plan to cut off the money. This is where Prince William finally takes action. And it is honestly brilliant in its execution. He didn't make a speech. He didn't give an angry interview to a morning television show. He didn't leak a story to the tabloids complaining about his stepmother. He just looked at a financial document, saw one specific name, and quietly, ruthlessly removed it forever. We have to talk about Annabel Elliot. Annabel is Queen Camilla's younger sister. She is an interior designer, and for nearly 20 years under the personal authority of King Charles, she was deeply embedded in the Duchy of Cornwall. Starting back in 2005, right after Charles and Camilla got married, Annabel was handed incredibly lucrative contracts to design, furnish and renovate royal properties, luxury holiday cottages in Restormel Manor, and estate offices across Poundbury and Cornwall. We are talking about a woman pulling in anywhere between £19,000 and £82,000 every single year, directly from the royal estate entirely, because her sister was sleeping with and then married to the boss. Over 2 decades, those payments added up to hundreds of thousands of pounds of duchy money flowing straight into Camilla's immediate family. For years, Charles justified this by claiming Annabelle was simply the best designer for the job, but inside the family, everyone knew what it really was. It was Charles using royal money to support Camilla's family network, ensuring they enjoyed the massive financial perks of royal proximity. The absolute second that Queen Elizabeth passed away, in September 2022, and William took legal control of the Duchy of Cornwall, he targeted Annabelle. William ordered a comprehensive corporate audit of all duchy contractors in 2024. The paperwork cleared the legal authority, transferred completely to William and Annabelle Elliott's name, was immediately and permanently wiped from the payroll. Now, some of you are probably asking whether William can even do this without causing a massive family war. And the answer is yes, because of how he did it. There was no public dispute. He didn't fire her loudly or release a statement saying he was cleaning house. The payments just simply stopped. Her name disappeared from the annual financial reports. When royal reporters finally noticed the omission and asked about it months later, William's team just gave a bland corporate excuse about bringing interior design services in-house and updating their commercial vendor lists to modern standards. But inside the palace, the message was completely deafening. William was sending a signal that did not need any translation whatsoever. He was proving that the 20-year free ride was over. He was proving that Camilla's family was no longer protected, and they were no longer entitled to the crown's resources. He completely humiliated Camilla's sister, and he did it using a completely unassailable legal corporate mechanism. Camilla could not even complain about it publicly without looking incredibly greedy and entitled. That is not a family disagreement. That is a devastating power move. The financial purge was happening quietly in the shadows. But the public insult was about to happen, right out in the open, where everyone could see it. And here is the thing about how royal power operates. Nobody announced anything negative, nobody stood on a balcony and made an angry statement about who was winning the war. But the message they sent was completely clear to anyone paying attention to the symbols. To understand how massive this move was, you have to look at the history of royal warrants, dating all the way back to 1155, when King Henry II granted the first official royal charter to the Guild of Weavers. Monarchs have used royal warrants to grant official patronage to businesses. By the 19th century, during Queen Victoria's reign, the system was formalised into the ultimate mark of royal favour. When a business receives a warrant, they can print the royal coat of arms on their products, signalling to the world that they are official suppliers to the crown. It is a commercial golden ticket worth tens of millions of pounds in branding. Historically, monarchs have guarded this power with extreme jealousy. Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip maintained total control over who received warrants for over 70 years. In 2025, King Charles made a massive institutional decision. He officially granted Prince William and Princess Catherine the legal authority to issue their own royal warrants. Now, to an outsider, that might look like nothing. It sounds like boring administrative paperwork, but in the royal world, granting warrant authority to the heir to the throne while the king is still reigning is an unprecedented move. It is one of the most visible and potent symbols of absolute power. Think about when you go to a high-end store in London and you see a bottle of famous perfume or a tailored suit on Savile Row or a jar of luxury jams. You see that little coat of arms printed on the label with the words, "By appointment to His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales." By taking that power and officially extending it to William and Kate Charles, was publicly signalling where the crown's true symbolic weight is actually located. He was deliberately repositioning the public face of the monarchy toward the next generation. But more importantly, look at who was entirely bypassed in this equation: Queen Camilla. Under normal royal traditions, a queen consort is granted the authority to issue her own royal warrants to her preferred suppliers, fashion houses and charities, just as the Queen Mother did for decades. Yet Camilla was completely skipped over. The clip of William and Kate taking on these new powers spread everywhere online. Millions of people watched it, analysed it, and understood exactly what it meant. The crown was publicly skipping over the Queen consort and shining the spotlight entirely on the Prince and Princess of Wales. It was a massive visual confirmation that the public and the institution care about William and Kate, not about Charles and Camilla. The power dynamic was now completely visible to everyone. The transition has already happened in the minds of the public. And once Camilla realised her power was evaporating in front of her very eyes, the cracks in her life started showing immediately. And Camilla's team went into full damage control mode, but it completely fell apart because you cannot spin a reality that everyone can clearly see. The collapse of Camilla's secure bubble is not happening with screaming matches. It is happening through very quiet, very specific, incredibly desperate retreats. We have to look at Raymill House. This is a sprawling 6-bedroom country manor in Wiltshire that Camilla purchased back in 1996 for £850,000. Right after her divorce from Andrew Parker, Bowles was finalised. It was her deeply personal sanctuary. It was the one place on earth that belonged entirely to her, completely separate from the royal machine. When she married Charles in 2005, she explicitly kept Raymill House in her private name. She used to retreat there constantly to escape the intense pressure of Buckingham Palace, taking off her tiaras, cooking in her own kitchen, and hosting her children and grandchildren away from the rigid protocol of royal life. It was her safe haven. Suddenly, in 2025, with zero fanfare, zero press releases, and zero lifestyle magazine features, Raymill House was quietly sold. It just disappeared from her personal property portfolio. To understand why this sale is so chilling for Camilla, you have to look at royal history. When King George VI passed away in 1952, his widow, Queen Elizabeth, who became the Queen Mother, was provided with Clarence House and the Castle of May as her permanent private residences for the rest of her life. She was protected by her daughter, the new Queen. But Camilla knows that when Charles passes away, she will not have a loving stepson, eager to shower her with royal palaces when Charles dies. Balmoral Castle, Sandringham House, Windsor Castle, and Buckingham Palace immediately pass to Prince William. Camilla will become a Queen Dowager, and she will be a guest in those houses, completely dependent on William's explicit invitation. And she knows that invitation is never coming. By selling her only independent private sanctuary, Camilla proved she is genuinely terrified about where she is even going to live when Charles is gone. She knows her likely inheritance will be limited to Clarence House, valued at £72 million, or Highgrove, valued at £39 million, properties that belong to the Crown or the Duchy, where William holds ultimate control. And while she's dealing with that crushing reality, William forced her into an impossible corner regarding Sarah Ferguson. In early 2026, Ferguson's name appeared repeatedly in the massive release of unredacted Jeffrey Epstein documents by the United States Department of Justice. While there is absolutely no evidence of criminal wrongdoing by Ferguson, the association itself is deeply toxic to the Crown. William essentially gave Camilla an ultimatum: distance yourself from Ferguson, permanently strip her of any access to royal spaces, or own the radioactive fallout yourself. Camilla refused to abandon her friend of 30 years, proving to William that her judgment is flawed, and she prioritizes her personal social circle over the safety of the Crown. That standoff isolated Camilla, completely draining whatever tiny fraction of influence she had left inside the palace. Camilla was totally isolated, and she only had one person left to turn to. And then Charles did something that made it impossible to pretend anymore. He made a phone call. This was not a public event. This was a private, excruciating 40-minute phone call between King Charles and his sister, Princess Anne, that took place in February 2026. And the details leaking out about this specific conversation tell you everything you will ever need to know about who has actually won this war. To understand why Charles could not fight back, you have to look at his physical and emotional state. Ever since his cancer diagnosis was announced to the world in February 2024, Charles has been undergoing continuous draining medical treatments while trying to maintain his official state duties. At 76 years old, he is physically exhausted. He simply does not have the stamina to fight a war on two fronts, managing his health while fighting a strategic battle against his own son and sister. Historical parallels make this moment even starker. Back in 1951, when King George VI was battling terminal lung cancer, he relied heavily on his daughter, Princess Elizabeth, and his son-in-law, Prince Philip, to take over the heavy lifting of the monarchy. George VI surrendered authority because he had no choice. Charles is in that exact same position now. Charles did not call Anne to scream at her. He did not pull rank as the monarch and order her to back down. He did not demand that she stop digging into the royal archives at Windsor. And he did not demand that William put Annabel Elliot back on the duchy payroll. He just listened. Sources describe the call as incredibly pained and profoundly quiet. Charles knows he cannot defend Camilla. And the real reason Charles surrendered goes so much deeper than his physical exhaustion. He surrendered because he knows they are right. He knows exactly why William is cutting off the money, and he knows exactly why Anne is securing the historical archives. Charles looks at his son and sees the lasting emotional damage caused by his own actions in the 80s and 90s. He is the man who carried on the affair. He is the reason Diana suffered. He is the reason a 15-year-old boy had to walk behind a coffin in front of 2 billion television viewers. How can a father look at his grieving son and demand that he protect the woman who caused that original grief? I can't, and he didn't. No statement, no press conference, no drama. Charles just essentially admitted he could not stop them. He threw in the towel. He accepted that he cannot protect his wife from the consequences of their shared past. And that was it. That was the whole thing. Done. The surrender was total, and it was irreversible. It is done. Camilla's power base is entirely dismantled, piece by piece, pound by pound. But what William and Anne are building in its place is actually the most incredible part of this entire story. When you step back and look at the entire chain of events, what you actually see is something so much more profound than just petty family revenge. This is not just a story about William firing an interior designer or Anne reading old letters. This is about a massive generational reckoning. Look at where William is actively pointing his £30 million a year from the Duchy of Cornwall. In 2023, William launched Homewards, a massive 5-year initiative backed by millions of pounds to eradicate homelessness across the United Kingdom. He is funding massive youth mental health projects. He is openly supporting HIV and AIDS awareness charities. Think about those specific causes for a second. Those are the exact causes Princess Diana championed in the 1980s and 90s. Go back to April 1987, when Princess Diana walked into the Middlesex Hospital and shook hands with an AIDS patient without wearing gloves, single-handedly, shattering the terrifying stigma surrounding the disease at a time when the world was paralysed by fear. Go back to January 1997, just months before her death, when she walked through an active landmine field in Huambo, Angola, risking her life to force the world to ban anti-personnel weapons. Go back to 1993, when she brought a young Prince William to visit homeless shelters run by the Passage charity in London, teaching him that royal privilege means nothing if you do not help the vulnerable. When Diana did those things, the royal establishment called her a dangerous rebel. They told her she was being too political, too emotional, and too unguided. They actively tried to stop her, stripping her of funding and isolating her from the core royal institution. Now, 30 years later, her son controls the ultimate wealth of that same institution. William has taken his mother's legacy, backed it with £1.2 billion in assets, and hardwired her exact empathy into the permanent architecture of the British monarchy. He is validating everything she fought and died for. And Princess Anne, with her relentless, unglamorous dedication to duty, completing over 400 official engagements every single year, is providing the absolute structural integrity to make sure the crown survives this transition. They are literally restructuring the monarchy into the exact institution Diana died trying to build. Camilla thought she had won, because she got the ring in 2005. She got the title and she got the crown placed on her head in 2023. She built the trap herself. She walked into it with her eyes open, thinking that proximity to Charles equated to permanent power. But she completely forgot who was next in line. The boy who walked behind his mother's coffin at 15 years old is now the most powerful man in Britain. He is not paranoid. He is not emotional. He is not reacting wildly to daily tabloid gossip. That's not grief. That's strategy. He waited nearly 30 years, acquired the absolute maximum amount of leverage possible, and then quietly, ruthlessly executed a masterclass in institutional correction. Her son and her sister-in-law are moving together quietly and permanently, reshaping everything Camilla built into something Diana would have recognised as hers.